Willkommen, bienvenue, welcome once again to another live stream. This is Property Matters, the first of a number of property-related podcasts that hosted by myself and Hamish McClay. And what we tend to try and focus on here is to be an opinion, but also educational thing. We try and signpost stuff that you should look at in more detail so you can make better decisions. And today is no different. We've called this one Communal Heating and the £60,000 question. Good Lord. Hamish, before I get my boots muddy walking all over this one, why don't you start us off?
Well, I can but try. What we have some new rules coming in, and one of the great challenges we have in life, and this topic often comes up in Property Quorum, particularly when we have Chris Gilson speaking with us from Root Homes and Juliet Babulu from Gunner Cook. But the two of them believe and actually sort of say, when we go, you can see what Zara has to say about this, but one of the things they do say is the more regulation we have, the greater difficulty it tends to cause rather than making matters simpler. If we were able to sort of work things on a more effective basis, it would benefit the majority. Now, we're speaking about a situation today which doesn't actually impact upon the majority, but those that it does impact upon, it is a very, very serious issue again. Very often it's one of those things which a complication which is added to those living in flats. Because what happens, of course, whatever type of property is, particularly in blocks of flats, it tends to be implicate a communal sort of type of heating. And basically the regulations is about the changeover in that. And so apparently in January, what's the date? Oh, today it is. The UK Ofgem becomes the UK energy regulator for heat networks. And that's the supply of heating and hot water to multiple homes from a central source, communal boilers in flats. This was largely unregulated compared with gas and electricity. Now, whilst that may be a regulator, what we've got, of course, is the consumer sort of sat in there where various changes take place. And there are instances, if you look them up, to see how certain people have been impacted. Because very often what happens, whatever the cost is, it's thrown at the residents. Now, sometimes these can be social residents, sometimes they're not at all. There are instances where people have got so much added as and this isn't ground rent, because we've got ground rent is one thing, we've got maintenance costs is another. And basically, it seems to me that the main, Zara again will be able to tell us about this, they can charge whatever they like, basically, and they just increase it ad infinitum. Oh, here's another good reason to increase it. If we add 10% onto that, we just make 10% sort of more profit, the maintenance guys. So basically, the cost of that heating is shared by the maintenance contractors, if you like, between the flat owners rather than the maintenance guys paying anything for it. So every time something happens, it's imposed, and people end up not being able to save their flats because of those maintenance costs. Never mind what they're paying for the ground rent, and never mind what they're paying for what one used to assume to be the largest of all, the mortgage side of things. But right. The people are again trapped in their properties, and also if they own them, and if they don't own them, many people are just have a serious sort of charge placed upon them for the heating of their particular properties.
Wow. Oh, well, we'll start us off. Zara, now, look, I'm going to be a bit mischievous here. So I just want to run this by you. surely, if this new whole thing whereby local suppliers of heating to flats, like a communal boiler, etc., and they've been unregulated, surely getting Ofgem taking an interest in becoming the energy regulator for these things will end up with fair treatment, transparent billing, and quality of service will improve. Isn't that the case?
Well, we just don't know, because from my reading of what it said, it also applies to housing associations that operate these heat networks.
Right.
Had a recent new build which has had a communal network heating system installed, and yet very little information was given in the contract pack about the heating system and how it worked. It was just sign this, make sure your client signs up to the provider, but we don't know. From what I've seen historically, these kind of communal heating systems, the companies that operate them potentially might be involved with developers, might have housing associations involved, but everything is now being made consumer friendly, consumer protection this, consumer protection that. But if you buy a property with one of these heating networks, you can't change the provider. It's very messy when you want to buy and sell your property. And also, I was trying to understand how this all works. So from what I can see, the boiler just generates heating for everybody. You don't get to say when it goes on and when it goes off. And
what?
You're paying for everybody. So you could have a development which has got a mixture of people living in there, old, young. So you might have people that sit in their homes all day with the heating on all day, or you've got people that go out to work all day, but yet their heating is on. So that was what I was trying to understand about how these things work. I never get told any of this because obviously it's not a conveyancing matter strictly. It's to do with people checking boilers and things like that. We're not plumbers. So people really do need to get advice from experts in this area. And that's not your local conveyancer.
I get that, Zara, but you're here for your level-headedness and your experience in these sort of things. I'm really looking to be guided in the art of common sense by someone like yourself, because the trouble is, and this is what worries me, part of me is saying, hang on a moment, this appears to be a license to print money by somebody, perhaps even the people who are supposedly playing fair and providing support to their local community. I mean, that little bit where you threw at me that you haven't got any local control, that it's all down to one central source, that rings all sorts of alarm bells for me.
Well, that was what I was struggling to understand. So I did ask somebody, and he said there was a thermostat that you could turn on and off.
Right.
But, I don't have any practical experience of this. What I can tell you, though, is I did see a story about the cost of these communal network heating systems being incorporated into service charges. And this young couple cannot sell their flat because their service charge has gone up to £7,500 a year.
What?
Which is disproportionate to the value of the property. But they're saying that it's basically due to having the energy bill tucked on to that service charge, and that you can't switch providers, so you can't shop around to get the best, the best deal as you would normally for what you're paying. It's very odd to see it on a system of houses, but I have seen it once. And the other thing I was going to flag was I've forgotten what I was saying now.
Well, not having the ability to easily change service providers. I mean, the whole premise behind a privatized energy provision was to democratize the ability of a householder to be able to move to whichever is the best for them, often the cheapest. But if you're tied into it, taking away your ability to shop around, that effectively makes you beholden to the providers of that. That seems to be wrong.
Exactly. Yeah. But also, that was what I was going to say. I've seen stories about these communal heating systems, that operated by housing associations.
Yeah.
If they break down, they don't get fixed quickly because there's a shortage of people that know how to fix these things. So
Right.
people can be left without hot water and heating for days on end, which is, it's horrible, especially in winter.
Yeah, and it's not like you can ring up. Your backstop would be the housing association, and if they're not providing, you're a bit stuffed.
Yeah. So at least if it's your own house and your boiler breaks, you shop around and if this plumber says I'm not coming, I can't do it today, you phone another one and until somebody comes round. But it doesn't seem that people are treated as human beings. It's like, oh, you'll just have to wait until somebody turns up, which could be God knows when.
Hamish, it feels like we're not going forwards, but we're going backwards here.
I mean, that's what I was trying to intimate earlier. There's a kind of regulation brought in, but we know we have this wondrous experience, don't we, of how don't you worry, Ofgem will look after the control of the energy costs, and basically they just go up and up and up. The Labour government tell us they're coming down, and I don't know quite what it is. Every time they say that, Ofgem seem to press a button and it gets raised a little bit higher. So the fact that it's being regulated by Ofgem, I don't hold really a wind of chance to the whole thing sort of being working out to any way benefiting the consumer. I don't know where Ofgem gets its power from itself to be able to sort of say these various things, or who's meant to run it. They've probably all got MBEs or OBEs, the guys that run it, because they've been appointed. But I don't know that. I mean, that's perhaps unfair. I retract it. But good grief, it's a sad thing when we do actually find the residents have no control. And again, it comes back to this particular sort of thing. It's putting basically the monetary control into the hands of, if you like, that management company to do as they choose. And since the regulations as loose as they happen to sort of be, they will just continue doing what they're doing. But I think the sad aspect is that life in itself is very expensive. These particular types of costs are not included when they look at the measurement of inflation and all the rest of it. And they say, oh, wow, isn't inflation great? It's coming down. Not if you have the cost of this heating imposed upon you, over which you have no choice. We as individuals can actually make a decision. This seems cheaper, that seems cheap. And we can make a decision to switch to who that best provider happens to be. And it was my wife said to me the other day, because we've got smart meters, I don't know what makes them smart. I think they're fright meters really, aren't they, rather than smart meters. Look how much it's going to cost you. We'll hide that somewhere. Look how much it's going to cost you so far this month, and we're only 3/4 of the way through it. And you think, pretty heck, it's never been that high before, but it's coming down. Ofgem tell us, and the Labour government have done this and that. I don't know. I just don't know how it happens. But I mean, the interesting thing is, and I mean, Zara's got it exactly sort of right. One of the family members had a challenge. We had that very, very heavy rain, which then froze. And unfortunately, as a consequence of that, it froze the back door. And the door needed to be sort of opened up. Family member opens up the back door. Well, absolutely sort of great. Then it won't lock again. It won't close again. Phones up social housing. Oh, this is emergency. We will be out at least within 48 hours. And in actual fact, it did take, from her phone call, it did take 48 hours. But at that time, of course, the temperature's way, way low. She can't close the back door properly. She can't go anywhere because the back door won't close. That was social housing looking after emergency. so as Zara said, you're not going to get the support that you require from people within social housing unless you're very, very lucky. There is an interesting thing, and we'll get Tiff in on an occasion in the future. She switched from social housing. One of the team. She switched from social housing to council housing, and there is a significant difference. Sometimes we might not think it does, but with council, they look after. If something happens, they will get to it. Social housing, because they basically are companies who own those properties, they're just money earners. That's all. They're just churning more and more money out all the time. That's all they're interested in, their profit. Whereas the councils can be interested in their residents. And
I think, dare I say it, it's about the fact that they're a capitalist-based organisation who are only focusing on their bottom line and looking at profiteering, which is fair. Okay, you're a limited company, I get that. But whereas the council have a duty of care to their various members who actually are living in the properties they own. And I think when you move from one to the other, yes, I've heard it said before that the amount of care seems to go down. Sorry, before I pass to Hamish to wind us up for it, is there any advice you could give people who are worried about this, where they should be looking to find more information, or any last thoughts from you?
I would just say do your research, and if you've bought a leasehold with one of these, look at the terms of your lease to see exactly what it covers. Because if you're going back to the £60,000 question for a replacement system, most leases will just say maintenance and repair, not install a new one. So that'll be interesting to see how that pans out, and whether that 60,000 is per property or whether it's split between a number of properties. It's, even a replacement boiler is normally between £1,500 and £1,800. But if it might be that your contribution, depending on the number of properties, might be greater than that. But, if it's your own property, you get control of who fixes it, who you trust. But if it's not your property, you're reliant on somebody else doing this and doing a good job. Are they going to provide these guarantees and then, make sure that it's looked after?
These are the big questions. Hamish, would you care to take us home, please, sir?
I think what we do have, and what we try and do with our podcast, is to create an awareness, sometimes educate. We can never fully educate because no situation is the same from one property to the next. But what it does actually sort of point to is how vastly important to any individual speaking to an expert becomes. And as Zara pointed out, Zara can advise on legal aspects to a property. And she has incredible knowledge about so many legal aspects. But even though one is aware of what's going on sort of legally, there are other things transferred to it, because only physically can a person who's looking to buy a property get there, look and see what's going on for starters. That is essential. Speak to a few of your neighbours if you can, or potential neighbours. Ask a few of them when you see them. Hey, what's the big, is there sort of something in here? But most importantly of all, try and find out as much detail yourself about what is going on relative to the cost of what you're going to have to pay on a regular basis. And then, of course, if you've got that, there might be something in it that your property lawyer can help you with, like Zara could. But the thing is, a lot of it is beyond the legal aspect. What management companies do is what management companies do. And sometimes within their terms, they're quite complicated. And if they're permitted to change anything as they go along, like they can in this case, they can throw it on individuals. They can throw it on the community. And then, of course, what happens in Communal, because everybody's speaking about Communal, what happens if you need to update, if everybody is responsible? How do you discuss? How do you come to a conclusion? So this is a veritable can of worms that we see before us opening up anyway, even without this new regulation coming in. But do watch about, not shout about communal costs of heating. And it's such an important thing, particularly this time of year. And we're really having not a particularly good winter, I have to admit, this winter.
Well, yes, we've been battered recently. So I think the overwhelming advice from both Zara and Hamish is do your research. If you are going to put yourself into communal living of that kind where you're getting communal heating, be aware that your abilities to move, change, upgrade or what have you, or fix may be severely limited. Do your research. But all the same, please keep your feet on the ground, keep reaching for the stars, and please try and look after your mental health until tomorrow, when we'll see you on It's a Kind of Magic. Take care. Bye-bye now.